Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
Hello, this is Dr. Russell Strickland, and this is an Unconventional Life podcast. I'd like to welcome today my guest, Dr. Justin Baeder. Dr. Baeder has a very interesting story. He actually applied to become an elementary school principal and enroll in a doctoral degree program at the same time and got both. He told me just a few minutes ago, it's one of those be careful what you wish for kind of thing. So can't wait to talk to him about that and everything that he's done since. He is the director of the Principal Center. We're going to talk a lot about that. So we're going to have a great episode today. Before I welcome Dr. Baeder in, I'd like to tell you once more this episode is being sponsored by Dissertation Done. If you are a doctoral student struggling through the dissertation process and you'd like some guidance, accountability, and support to get you through this process years faster than you would on your own, reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done. That's dissertationdone.com/DONE. And if you've graduated by chance and you want to get your message out there into the world, expand your authority platform and let folks know what you can do for them, why don't you consider writing your book? You can reach us at dissertationdone.com/book and find out how we can get you from a blank page to published author to expand your authority platform. So I want to welcome again Dr. Baeder. Justin, welcome. How are you doing today? Thank you for being here.
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Awesome. So let's go back to just before we talk about you applying for both an elementary school principalship and your doctoral program at the same time. Walk me through what was going on at that time in your life. Why did you decide to apply to the doctoral program in particular? Because that's what most of our listeners are doing, and not many people do that. So what gave you that impetus to make that decision?
Yeah, well, I'd had a great experience in my principal preparation program at the University of Washington, and knew a lot of the faculty in that program, and had 1 year after I had finished the principal program where I was not taking classes, kind of had enjoyed that environment and saw that as a pretty promising next step for my career, maybe to become an author, to become a researcher, something along those lines. And professionally, I wanted to become a principal as my next step, and I figured I was kind of hedging my bets, right? If I get the admission to the doctoral program, great. If I get the principalship, great. I'm happy either way.
Awesome.
And I ended up getting both, so that was a little bit of a of a time management challenge at the beginning.
So, like you said, it's one of those be careful what you wish for sort of things. How did you handle that? We always tell our doctoral students, try not to do any of the major stressors in life: getting married, getting divorced, getting sick, which you can't really help, but getting a new house, a new job. And here you are with a big new job and starting your doctoral degree program. How did that work out for you?
Yeah, I really had to be careful about my course load and, conscious of when I was scheduling my classes. So I would typically take, one class per quarter. Where I really ran into some challenges was with a certain research methods class. I don't remember which class it was exactly, but it was only offered during the day on Fridays. And it's difficult to get away during the day when you're a school principal.
Right.
Fortunately, I was able to do it. I just had the coverage within the building, and nothing ever went wrong. I think I got a little bit lucky on that front, but my door would be closed. The secretary would say, "Oh, he's not available right now," and I would come back as soon as class is over. So kind of barely squeaked by with that one course, but worked out okay.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing that they were able to that you were able to get through that, because it seems like most of these programs understand that their students are working adults. Was your program geared towards working adults, or were they assuming that school was your full-time occupation?
Yeah, I thought it would be kind of a mix. As it turned out, I would say most of the students were full-time graduate students, or they had a job on campus. Maybe they were a graduate assistant of some sort. But yeah, I think I was probably the only working school administrator in the program at the time, or one of just a few. Because it was very difficult to juggle both. So definitely the difference between the PhD program and the EDD program, the latter of which was much more accommodating to schedules like mine.
So when you get to the dissertation, then what does that do? Because if everybody else is kind of full-time focused on that work, that's a very, very different mentality than, when you're working full-time. So how did that work out for you?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at my peers who maybe were full-time graduate students, didn't have a traditional, professional level career, I think the temptation is the same to kind of put it off, or to procrastinate, to not really focus on it. But I did notice that a lot of my classmates were just more immersed in that world of research. They were getting involved in faculty-led studies. I did not personally participate in any faculty research projects. Under there were a lot of grants, there were a lot of studies going on that I could have been a researcher on, and just kind of missed out on that opportunity because I had a job. So That was a big difference.
Yeah. Well, I always, I look at the doctoral students as coming into one of two major camps. The first is the traditional doctoral student who is, they're right out of high school, college, graduate school, and moving into academia. And those folks are on campus all the time. They've got offices on campus. They've got other students are doing their research at the same time. There's normative pressure to work on your dissertation and to get it done in the way that they do it. Then we have our unconventional students who have a full-time job, like you were starting a significant bump up in your career and still juggling that with school. And when you're this unconventional student, oftentimes you don't have other folks that of who are doing the same thing, and other folks who can kind of keep you on track. You feel like you're kind of on your own. Did that strike you at all as you were going through your research for your dissertation, that feeling of being alone in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, the other students in the program would know each other from, being on campus more, from being on some of the same research projects. And the alternative that I could have done was to do the cohort EDD program, which my wife actually did at the same time. So I would have been in that with her if I had gone that route. But yeah, there's definitely that sense in if you're a working adult in a program that's designed for full-time students, that you're kind of the super senior, or the odd man out.
That's right. Now, and you mentioned that as you were going through this, you actually had lost an advisor along the way. Is that right?
Yeah. So I had a fabulous advisor, someone I got along really well with, but he was kind of headhunted by another employer and pulled away to work on what was a very interesting project. So I understand why he did it. It was kind of a unique opportunity. And got matched up with another advisor who was also fabulous and saw me through the process. But
very cool.
Yeah.
Now, did your first advisor, did he go into industry or get headhunted out by another university?
It was by a foundation to lead a research project. Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes I've heard of in the past where professors will leave a university and they will bring some of their students, particularly their students who are getting close to graduating. They might bring them with them. Or they might be able to remotely continue to work together. But either one of those options would be kind of difficult if you're working full-time as well.
Yes.
What about your second advisor then? How did the process go once you were matched up with advisor number two?
Yeah, so we continued to work together remotely, and I think by that point I had moved out of state. So I spent 4 years in that job as a principal, and then started my own business. And I don't remember exactly where I changed advisors, but it was at a time where I wasn't really getting much done on the dissertation anyway. So I was just finishing up coursework, and I think he took over advising me on how to finish out my coursework and how to structure some of the credits that go toward research, even if they don't involve actual coursework. Yep. And by the time I had moved out of state, I had finished all of my in-person coursework. So
yeah, I had a kind of a unique background. I actually started graduate school in astronomy and astrophysics. I was going to be a research professor, and my advisor died before I finished, and I decided instead of kind of starting over with new research with a new advisor, I was going to go work and make a little bit of money. And so that's what I ended up doing. But when you mentioned this the fact of being remote from your advisor. That was actually something that I noticed that was going to be an issue for me if I was going to continue working, because I was going to have to, like I said, I was going to have to get a job and start making some money. It had been too long as a poor graduate student at that time. So it's a different a different situation when you're not there and still having to work through the process on your own. Now you mentioned that you had started your own business, but you were continuing to go through the dissertation process. How did that work? How did it finally work itself out? What got you over the hump, so to speak, so that you were able to graduate?
Yeah, I mean, for many years, it was very easy to put off because, it's always more urgent to earn a living than to make some progress toward a deadline that may be a couple of years out. So, eventually that deadline that was looming years out in the future started looming not so far out in the future. And, I knew I was coming up on the 10-year deadline to finish the program. So I spent the first 4 years taking my courses and being a principal. And then, the next couple of years starting the business and doing the program remotely. And my advisor said to me one day, I'm going to retire at the end of 2018, the 2017-2018 school year. You need to graduate. And I said, you're right. I absolutely do. This is my deadline anyway. I'm not going to try to get any kind of extension. I really just needed that deadline or some other kind of kick in the pants to get it done, because it had just been on the back burner too long.
And we hear that so often too, that there's just no accountability, no structure in the dissertation process. When you're going through your classes, at least there's some structure. They tell you what to read, what to write, when to do it. But when you get into the dissertation, you're just out there on your own, either getting things done because you are super disciplined, or not getting things done because you don't know what to do, have other priorities, etc. So that idea of some accountability is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say another big thing that I would say my advisor did that was very helpful is he focused me on milestones, getting the literature review done, getting the human subjects research approval done, getting, all the different phases, pretty much that was all we did, right? We just focused on, this is the next milestone. Here's what it needs to look like. Let's go for it. And, since there's no real other thing to do to kill time, there are no more classes to take,
right.
There's no more tests to take or lectures to sit through. That's it, is focus on those goals.
Right. Yeah. When I was in grad school there, after you take the classes, universities keep track of you by the classes that you're in. Right. So as I was a dissertation student, I was enrolled over and over and over again in a class called Advanced Residency, which I take it to mean I was very good at being there. I guess is what that was. But yeah, you're right. There's nothing else to do. You have to either get it done or ship on or ship out. So tell me, how did things go after you finished and after you graduated? What was that experience like of defending and finally realizing you were finished and that you're a doctor now?
Yeah, well, I think one thing that I realized as I went through the kind of final committee process and defending and everything is that, I guess maybe a lot of people have kind of an adversarial experience there, but I felt like while I was being held to a very particular standard, my committee wanted me to graduate. They didn't want me to fail. And I think there's, I don't know, maybe universities vary, but I think there's this perception out there that the goal of your committee and the goal of your defense is to kind of poke holes in everything and make you fail. And I felt that that attempt to try to poke holes in things happened constructively along the way, but it wasn't, they weren't setting me up to, kind of trick me and spring something on me at the very end. So it was a very positive experience, I would say.
Good.
And then coming out of that, I would say just, being able to, to put the letters after my name, to be able to be, kind of noted as an authority. I think that comes, pretty automatically. I'll never forget one time I had a pretty large contract with a school district that was questioned by the school board. It was big enough that, I was being hired to do some professional development for the school district, and the contract had to be approved by the school board. Right. And one of the school board members said, who is this guy? He seems to be just a blogger. Mm-hmm. And and it was a public meeting, and I saw the notes from it. And I thought, I don't really want it to be thought of as just a blogger,
Right.
like, I do want to be recognized as an authority on this topic, and
Sure.
certainly I want to have earned that legitimately. And I think that was one of the things that really, pushed me to, to seek to finish and,
Right.
to prove to myself and to not be called a blogger anymore.
So you were up for this contract and you didn't have the credential yet. And you're like, wow, if I had that. Yeah. It reminds me of, so Shaquille O'Neal, obviously he was a huge basketball star, right? And accomplished just about anything that you could accomplish on the court. But he knew that his time was going to end at some point with being able to be a basketball player. And he decided that he was going to be involved in a lot of business ventures, but he didn't want to just be considered a dumb jock. He actually went out and got his doctoral degree so that he would be taken seriously when he's sitting in these business meetings. And he's still been, a personality and seems to like to, joke around and have fun and all that kind of stuff. But if anybody ever wants to say, well, we're going to get one over on him, he's like, no, not on Dr. O'Neal. So that idea of having that credibility and that the credibility, the authority is another thing, but the credibility of just when someone sees your name, they automatically give you the benefit of the doubt is huge.
Yeah. And I feel like, I don't want to need that. I want my work to be self-evidently worthy of that credibility. But as you said, yeah, it is about getting the benefit of the doubt. It's about, not having people, wonder up front and allowing the work to have the opportunity to speak for itself. Exactly right.
Because a lot of people make snap judgments, and yes, you want to be there for the long haul, but you want to make sure the snap judgments go down in your favor as many times as possible. So what kind of doors do you think opened for you after you earned the doctoral degree? You talked about the credibility and the fact that it's you getting the benefit of the doubt. How did that manifest for you?
Yeah, I think it, a lot of it shows up in subtle ways, because certainly even in education, where education is valued very highly, it's certainly not a requirement, right? There are plenty of people who do exactly what I do and don't have a doctoral degree, and that's perfectly fine. They're known as, wonderful experts, and and they have certainly earned that through the quality of their work. I would say it has probably made it a little bit easier to reach a price point that's more premium for my work. Mm-hmm. It has made it easier to kind of get those contracts approved or get those those sales approved. So for me, I have to be honest, it was very much a business decision to do the degree, to finish it. I did not have further professional goals in the sense of getting a job. That was not my goal. It really was a business decision.
And for a lot of folks who are kind of entrepreneurial or who want to hang out a shingle to do whatever type of work, that becomes it becomes a very good investment opportunity to invest in yourself and to always have this. So the opportunities are out there if you do want a job teaching or anything along those lines, but also just being out there on your own 2 feet. It tends to open doors, and it tends to get you noticed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you think of any specific incidences where you found out later on, or you knew at the time, that having your doctoral degree helped swing a hinge that you might not have been able to open that door otherwise?
I have to think that it makes a little bit of a difference with getting approved to speak at conferences or getting invited to speak at conferences. It definitely is a filter for certain things, right. Not a strict rule. Again, certainly people do all of the things that I do without that, but yeah, I just feel like it's, it greases the wheels a little bit, and it makes people more, more open to looking at your work, right, to then judge it on its own merits. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about now the Principal Center. What do you do there? What are some of the things that you've accomplished through the Principal Center, and who are you helping there?
Sure, yeah. So the Principal Center is primarily an online business. I would describe it as kind of a membership site and with online courses, as well as a consulting business. Most of what we do is is online, and I do some face-to-face consulting, but I try to do as little of that as possible and as much with the the online side, and I found that to be quite a bit more scalable. And I also have kids, and found that to be a great business model compared to being on the road, doing a lot of on-site client work. So the Principal Center obviously serves school administrators, people who want to become school administrators, people who supervise school administrators. So in that world of principals, assistant principals, that kind of thing. And I help them get into classrooms, manage their time more effectively, and have a greater impact on student learning.
Awesome. Okay. So you said if you'd like to become a principal, if you are a principal, and if you oversee principals, there are things at the Principal Center at each of those levels. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I know that you were talking about the business model. One of my former students works with school districts on developing codes of conduct for their employees. And he used to, when I was actually helping him through the dissertation process, he was always in a different hotel, traveled all the time. And in the past few years, he's taken on more of an online model. And he said he can't believe it, that his travel time is down. He's actually seeing more people, but even on like a per meeting basis, so to speak, he's seen their revenue go up as he's moved to an online model. And he said he can't even fully explain it, but there's just efficiencies there that are hard to pin down. So not only is he on the road less, he's not in an airplane and therefore able to meet more people more often. Right. But in addition to that, if he just looks at it on a kind of per meeting basis, he still sees their revenue going up. So it's the way of the world. It's the way of the future. It's here to stay, I think. We're hearing the COVID pandemic right now, and a lot of people are shifting even more towards online models. But I think we're going to see that that's going to continue in the years to come, that we're going to have businesses taking advantage of not needing so much office space because they can get people working from home more and more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, tell me, is there anything in particular with the Principal Center that you'd like to share with us? Any specific stories where you really helped someone in a way that maybe you weren't necessarily expecting, or that came off as a great success story for you?
Well, one thing I really enjoy at the Principal Center is the opportunity to help people who are either just getting started with their careers or who are ready to move to the next level in their careers, take advantage of some of those opportunities to make themselves a good competitor for the job, because, a lot of people who are the best at the work are the worst at self-promotion, and getting hired often is somewhat an exercise in self-promotion, and it's very uncomfortable for people who are very humble and don't like to toot their own horn. So one of the things that I do is help people with their resume, with their cover letter, with their interview skills, and that's really fun to see, because in a lot of cases, you find that the people who have really been doing the most meaningful and high-level work in a school district are not the people with the titles or the big salaries. Mm-hmm. They're the kind of unsung heroes who are content to be behind the scenes, right? But also, they get paid half as much, and they often work twice as hard. And it's very gratifying for me to see people really take on those senior leadership roles when, perhaps without some help, they would have kind of shied back from them, or they would have, kind of lost out to more aggressive and self-aggrandizing candidates. Right.
No, it's absolutely true. You get there are people who are really good at doing the job. And there are people that are really good at promoting themselves, and those are seldom the same person. So to be able to get the folks who are the most valuable players to be standing up in front more often is really worthwhile. Tell me about some of the other things that you're doing, though, because I know that you have a podcast, right? There's other things going on. Tell us what else you've been up to lately since you graduated.
Yeah, so the podcast has been a ton of fun and just a great way to connect with other kind of consultants and authors and thought leaders. And it's amazing, the doors that a podcast will open. People who would, never return an email or answer a phone call from someone they don't know, who's not offering to pay them a large amount of money. A podcast is different, and it really does build relationships. And I would say for the first 4 to 5 years, that really was 100% of the goal of the podcast, was to just to build relationships, to get to know people, and to have some good free content to put out for people. So that's been a lot of fun. It kind of keeps me connected to the issues that people are writing about and thinking about and solving. within the field. So, it's as a specialist in one thing, it's easy to get kind of dialed into that and that only.
Right.
And having a podcast with, a much more diverse range of guests on a wider range of topics really, I think, has been good from my perspective.
Yeah, it's true. And it gives you a broader worldview. I have one of my guests that I recently recorded a podcast with, just to talk about the range of folks. We have, you work with principals and you have a podcast of your own and are doing all sorts of entrepreneurial things. I've had superintendents on, I've had former students on, I've had book publishers. But this guy earned his PhD in organic chemistry, and he was completely blind from birth. And if you're familiar with organic chemistry, it's all of these pictures of these balls and sticks that are all connected together to form these long molecule chains. It's very visual the way it's presented. And he developed sort of accessibility tools to help him be able to get through that, and that other people are now able to use. And then he went on to do cool things like set up truly blind taste tests for the Francis Ford Coppola winery and help a particular phone manufacturer make their glass more silky. Just really cool things that he talked about. And I don't know where I would have gotten that if I hadn't been doing something like this. It's really cool to have all those unique conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, what's next? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah. So, I very much enjoy what I'm doing, and doing more work at the senior district leadership level, and trying to look at some of the problems that individual administrators are dealing with and try to take those upstream a bit. One of my podcast guests that I was thrilled to be able to interview earlier this year was Dan Heath, author of many books with his brother Chip Heath. Just tremendous business author, very well known in the mainstream business world. And he came on my podcast and talked about his book Upstream, and really presented his model for thinking through not just the problems that we might have to face right now, but the problems upstream that caused those downstream problems that we're dealing with. And having heard for years and years what school-based administrators are dealing with, I realized that a lot of the solutions need to come from senior leaders in the district, superintendents and assistant superintendents. So I'm expanding my work in that area to work more with central office leaders.
So what's an example of one of those problems that some of our audience that might be principals may be dealing with on a daily basis that you see there might be some upstream solutions to?
I was just talking with someone today who's a principal in a very large school district, and a lot of my work focuses on teacher evaluation and teacher feedback, and that kind of instructional leadership process that administrators do one-on-one with teachers. And this particular principal was describing the system that they use, and we were talking about how we could get them set up in our software. And the system that this principal was describing to me was extremely complicated, unnecessary, unhelpfully complicated, and involved a ton of work, very, very tedious work on the principal's part to document everything in just a particular way. And I think if central office leaders knew what that process really looked like for principals, they would very quickly say, we need to streamline this. We need to, focus much more concretely on what the teacher needs and what the principal needs, and not worry so much about all these forms and, fields that need to be filled out, because it's a distraction from the real work of improvement. And I think there are lots of things like that, where if we listen to our people who are on the front lines and really doing the most substantive work, we can use that not to say, well, you just do whatever you want, but we can use that to create excellence as a system and say, if you are struggling with that, probably everybody else is struggling with it too and just not complaining. And that means we have an opportunity to make this better. And really only senior leaders can capitalize on those opportunities.
Because they're not going to make it better just for you, but for all of your peers, everybody else. Reminds me of my son has a hearing loss. And so for years in school, he had an IEP. So we'd have a meeting with about 4 or 5 people in the school to decide what sort of things we need to do to help make sure he was going to be successful in school, despite the fact he has a hearing loss. And in the forms they had to fill out, there was a section where they said, well, what did you guys consider in terms of an intervention? And so the person would write down, for example, that he should get preferential seating near the front of the class so he can hear the teacher better. Then right under that, it says, what options did you also consider but ruled out? And literally every single time they did it, they would fill out the form the same way. We also considered not assigning him preferential seating where he could hear the teacher better, and we rejected that option. It's like, did that spot really need to be on the form? I mean, if that's how everybody's going to answer it all the time, I mean, it's great if you say, well, we consider A, B, C, and D, and we picked A. But if we consider A and not A, you're going to write both of them down. Yeah, it seems like that's an area where you could make life a little less complicated for everybody involved. Because I know there were some folks that spent half their time in these IEP meetings. They spent half their time helping kids and the other half of their time filling out these forms. So, yeah, I guess that's going to be a problem in a lot of areas.
Well, yeah, and I think especially when it comes to things that are inefficient, the inefficiency of someone who's on the front lines doing the work doesn't appear as a budget line item to senior leadership, right? Now, if you get software that makes it much more efficient to write good IEPs that don't waste a lot of people's time, well, that software is going to be a budget line item, right? That the senior leader has to approve. So I think there really is an obligation there to look at the efficient functioning of the system and to listen to those frontline people about where they're losing time. So.
That creates what's essentially it's an opportunity cost. I talk to our students who are working on their dissertations all the time. It's like, you want to get this thing done as soon as possible because you can see the money you're paying in tuition and it sucks, right? It's a huge number and you're paying that every year or every quarter or whatever it might be. But what you can't see is that when you graduate, your income's going to go from here to here and you're losing all of that for every extra year you spend working on this program. This dissertation program. And so, and that's one that students look at. And after the fact, they say, oh, wow, I see that. But when you first tell them about it, while they're in the process, it's hard to identify that, in fact, you're losing money because you're not doing what you really want to be doing right now, and making the money that comes along with that.
Yeah. And really, I see it like an asset, like any asset, when was the best time to start saving for retirement? Well, the day you're born is a great day to start saving for retirement. It's better, better late than never. Right. But, when it comes to the doctorate, I wrote a book before I finished my doctorate, and that was probably about an equal amount of work to, compared to the dissertation. Well, the book probably would have sold better if I had finished the doctorate first and had that on the cover. So yeah, it is a missed opportunity. Every day,
second edition it and put it out there with Doctoral on the cover. That's definitely one of those low-hanging fruit items. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's one of those things that when you get that doctoral degree, doors open, opportunity knocks, and it comes with a premium because now you're a doctor. So I tell our students all the time, listen, folks that knew you when are going to treat you the same. Everybody else you meet is going to treat you differently. Your wife, your mom, your kids are not going to call you doctor or anything, but everybody else will. And it's amazing when you start to see that, how it can change things in ways both subtle and gross. So it's kind of cool. So now you mentioned a book. What's the title of the book? I want to make sure people go out there and check it out.
Sure, yeah. So the book is called, I think I've got it here. Now We're Talking, 21 Days to High Performance Instructional Leadership. Awesome. And it's just about getting into classrooms every day and having conversations with teachers about their practice. And, it's something everybody wants to do, but I have a model that, that makes it doable and efficient and helpful.
So it sounds like you're taking that now to the next level because your book is about getting principals to look at their frontline workers. And now you're talking to senior leaders about getting to in there and talking to their frontline workers. So sounds like it's a bit of a common theme.
Yeah, and it definitely has led to an idea for the next book. So
yeah, very cool.
Excited about that.
Cool. So you've already mentioned one interesting podcast guest, but has there been anything else that you think that's happened because of the podcast, the business, the doctoral degree that you found surprising or interesting that you think you never could have seen that would have happened to you? Before, years ago?
Yeah, I think just the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with people who have been kind of my idols in the profession. There are people who, just don't let random educators pick up the phone and talk to them, and those doors have been opened. So some of the biggest names in the field have gladly made time on their schedule for an interview, and that's been a pleasure. And then selfishly, I get to ask the questions that I've always wanted to be able to ask those people. And in some cases now they're retired, and they're even harder to get access to. Right. So I'm really glad that I started the podcast when I did to be able to talk to some of those amazing guests.
Yeah.
One of the things that I, again, never really intended to do with the podcast was monetize it or get sponsorships. Mm-hmm. And we started to get, I was surprised at how many requests we would get to run ads on the podcast, often from venture-backed software firms. I mean, I think that's probably in every field. There is a software startup that has a lot of money and needs to get their message out. And certainly there are a lot of podcasts, but software is a huge field for investment dollars. And one of the things that those investment dollars get spent on is marketing, and podcasts are great marketing, especially when it reaches an ideal audience. So we get inquiries all the time for podcast advertising. We turn a lot of them down just because often we're advertising our own programs, and that's great. But it was a door that came open, even though we never really set it up to go that way.
Yeah, no, that's true. I have with this podcast, I just really want to get the word out to folks who are doctoral students who are going through this right now, that you're not alone, that everyone faces challenges in this process, and that they got through it, you can get through it too. And then all these amazing opportunities like you've mentioned today, Dr. Baeder, that's it's the brass ring that's worth going for. So keep it up, don't quit, keep going. And if I can get that message out to one person with each episode, then I think that the episode will have carried its weight. So I appreciate you being on with us today to help do that.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I agree completely that it is worth it. It is worth it to finish faster rather than slower. It is worth it to get help. So I'm grateful for the work that you're doing to help people cross that finish line more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Well, again, thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Baeder. I want to let everybody know, once again, this episode was brought to you by Dissertation Done. If you're working on your dissertation, about to start working on your dissertation, or considering abandoning the dissertation, reach out to us first. Go to dissertationdone.com/done, and we'll talk to see if you're a good candidate for us to help you get through this process years faster than you would on your own. And if you're out there living your unconventional life right now and you want to get that message out to people and expand your authority in the eyes of those that you hope to serve, maybe you need to write your book. And we are taking people through that process, getting you from a blank page to a published author in our Expand Your Authority program. You can find out more about that by reaching out to us at dissertationdone.com/book. My guest today has been Dr. Justin Baeder with the Principal Center. Dr. Baeder, real quick before we go, please let everybody know, how can they reach you? What's the best way to get in touch with you if they want to follow up?
Sure, you can find me on Twitter at EduLeadership, that's EDU Leadership, or at principalcenter.com.
So that's .edu leadership, and on Twitter, and principalcenter.com on web browsers everywhere. Thank you so much, Dr. Baeder.
Thanks, Dr. Strickland.
All right, go out and live your unconventional life. See you next week.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.